The Lady of Rage really went from being one of the most promising female rappers to being nothing at all because her career died before it even got started. People spent years thinking that her career ended because she wasn't good enough, but now she's speaking up and she blames Dr. Dre for killing her career. She has so much tea to spill about her time at Death Row Records, and y'all won't believe how badly they messed up her life. Hollywood is one of the hardest places to make it because there are so many talented artists that just never get their big break, and the Lady of Rage is one of such artists. Well, to be fair to her, she kind of had a big break, but then she got involved in so much drama and her career suffered for it. So the Lady of Rage, aka Robin Allen, first started popping off back in the 90s, and her afro puffs became one of her selling points. She gradually became one of the best female rappers of her time, and this isn't surprising because she could spit bars. She was a good rapper, and she knew her potential, but unfortunately, she didn't exactly have a lot of support in the industry. She dropped her first album and then she kind of disappeared from the rap scene entirely. For a long time, people thought that she just wanted to leave the industry because she couldn't cope. But it turns out that her career was sabotaged by none other than Dr. Dre. Okay, so a little backstory. The moment Lady of Rage finished high school, she moved across the country to try to get herself signed to a label. Now, this was a huge risk for her to take as a teenager who wasn't exactly swimming in money, but she got lucky and was introduced to Snoop Dogg. Now, even though Snoop wasn't exactly a huge artist at the time, he had already gotten the attention of the public after one of his songs was featured in the movie Deep Cover, and the song was produced by Dr. Dre, who was the president of Death Row Records at the time. Now, Lady first caught Dr. Dre's attention when he heard her vocals on L.A. Posse's album, They Come in All Colors, which dropped in 1991. And after this, she finally got to Death Row Records, and she believed that the label was going to help her become a big name in rap. And to be fair, the label did have big plans for her in the beginning, but those plans never came to reality. The label had a lineup that included plans for Dr. Dre to drop his album first, and then Lady would drop hers. She already started working on what she wanted the album to be, and she picked out a title for it. And she wanted to title it Eargasm. The plan worked out well at first, with Dr. Dre releasing his album The Chronic to massive success. It still remains one of the best rap albums ever made, and Lady was featured on the album as a guest artist. Now, this was an attempt by Dr. Dre and the label to get her name out there so that they could build public anticipation for her album. But then Dr. Dre and the label did her dirty and decided to push Snoop Dogg's album forward. And what this meant is that instead of releasing her album after Dr. Dre's, they released Snoop's album instead of Lady's album. Their excuse was that Snoop was already making waves and they wanted to take advantage of that to push his album. Now, this was a major red flag and an indicator of how badly Dr. Dre was going to treat Lady, because child, he did her dirty big time. I mean, Lady was already making a name for herself as well, and if the label had pushed her, I think the album would have been a hit. But they decided to put their energy into Snoop Dogg's album Doggy Style, which was another hit. But it wasn't the last time her album got pushed back. After Snoop's album, Dr. Dre decided to work on an album for the Dog Pound, even though Lady was more popular at the time. And y'all want to know the wild part? Is that the label never even gave her a decent explanation for pushing her album. In a 2017 interview, she revealed just how dirty Dr. Dre had done her. She said, "When I came, they told me they were going to do Dr. Dre's album and my album was going to be next. After The Chronic came out, Snoop blew up, so they were like, Snoop's album is going to be next and your album is going to be after his." It just kept getting pushed back, and I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, but that's just how it was. I don't know if it was a female thing or an ego thing or what, but it just didn't happen when it should have happened. But if you think that's bad, it gets even worse because the label pushed her album back again, and this time it was because they signed another rapper who would go on to becoming one of the greatest rappers of all time, and I'm talking about Tupac. While Tupac was an asset to the label, he was a threat to Lady because his arrival at the label meant that even less attention was paid to her. Now, y'all want to know what the annoying thing about this is? It's the fact that the label said there wasn't enough money to push Lady's album along with all the other albums that they were working on, but they paid $1.4 million to get Tupac out of Rikers, where he was doing time for assault pending his appeal hearing. Now imagine, the label paid that much for a new artist, but they didn't want to spend money on your album. Ooh, child. Unsurprisingly, she did not get along with Tupac at all.
What was the effect on Death Row when Tupac joined them? How did things change?
Things, in my opinion, changed. It was a little more friction to me.
Well, she eventually got her album from the label, but it came at the worst possible time because there was so much drama going on at that label. First off, Dr. Dre decided to break apart from the label, and this caused a lot of trouble for Lady because he was the one who worked and produced her album, and he made sure to take the album with him. It's not like he needed it, he just never released it, but he just decided to be petty and take the album. Lady said that was Dr. Dre's whole project. He came up with the title and everything. He had the concept and his vision of that. Once he left, all that left with him. This meant that she needed to start working on another album ASAP. And unlike other artists who'd gotten help and support from their label, she didn't get anything because the label had started to fall apart by that time. Dr. Dre left and took her album with him. Snoop left the label. Tupac was shot and killed in Vegas. Suge went to prison. Oh, it was all just a hot, stinking mess. And in an interview, she opened up about how that affected her album, saying, "I didn't have the conductor and I didn't have the same help that everyone else had when it was their time for albums to be produced. Everybody came in and contributed to The Chronic, Doggy Style, and Dog Food. Everybody came in for Above the Rim, and Murder was the case. When it was my turn, it was just me. I second-guessed myself. I had the highest confidence in my lyrics, but when it came to formatting and the sound, I depended on somebody else for that." When she eventually released her album Necessary Roughness, it kind of flopped, which wasn't surprising because she had no real support backing her up. She asked the label to release her from her contract since they had no other plans for her, but they refused, so she had to stick it out. By the time her contract expired and she could walk away, she was unable to get another break, and even though she continued to make music, her career was over for good. The Lady of Rage is an example of how much damage the industry can do to a person because Dr. Dre and Death Row Records in general really did kill her career and waste her time. And even to this day, people feel like what happened to her was really unfair, and she could have gone on to become one of the greatest female rappers if it weren't for people like Dr. Dre. Rage was incredibly underrated and undervalued. It sucks to know she never received the support she deserved from her label. They should have dropped her album simultaneously with Snoop's, so there was no excuse why they couldn't push her since she has so much talent and so much buzz around her career. And guess it was called Death Row for a reason. It was like waiting on death row for your career to end. Rage was very talented. She really did deserve better, but like I said, Hollywood can be a really tough place to make it, and most people only get one shot and that's it. Anyways, if you like this video, then you'll love this next one even more.